Okay, let's get started. My name is Ambassador Monique Carey, and I'm with the Climate Protection Consortium. I would like to welcome you to the Global Board of Advocates Climate Restoration Town Hall. So, what if humanity could all agree on just one thing? Is there just one thing that every person on Earth could agree on? Not about politics, but as humans. Simple things, like our friends, family, our health, our safety, and our security. And what about our future? And if we could agree on any of these things, then what could we accomplish together? Could we keep these things safe? We're here today to offer you new social tools that could free up opportunities to move us to a better place. These tools could protect our basic needs and unite us together to do even bigger things. We propose that these new tools, in the form of an ideology, be contained into a new set of institutions and placed in front of the world's people and their governments to direct the authority and influence of the people's will and best interests. I'm specifically here to show you how we could use these institutions to reverse global warming and stabilize our climates before the end of the decade, with the full support of humanity. As you're listening, bear in mind that the power of this new social ideology could easily commission any critical social, environmental, or humanitarian mission. Sound interesting? Okay, here we go. We propose that these new institutions commission an option for humanity not to settle for net zero emissions within 30 years, but to actually begin reversing global warming and stabilize our climates within this decade. The resources for this mission are already owned by the people through the world's governments, so we're not asking you for any money to do this. If you've seen our websites, you may have read how we're different from the Paris Climate Agreement. First, nations approach this agreement from the point of view of what their nation can do that will not conflict with its agenda or its special interest constituents. This is a very complex calculation from inside the government. So, our first assumption is that no nation, even all nations coming together, could ever free themselves from the gridlock of their conflicting national agendas and special interest divides. Second, our world's governments simply do not know how to regulate or legislate climate responsibility without getting into trouble with big business and industry. So, they choose to delegate this problem to the private sectors, like big oil. Now, big oil, gas, and coal companies will not tackle this climate responsibility because it does not return a profit. They would rather kick the problem down the road into the future. Also, it is clear that melting the planet's poles makes available a huge amount of oil, gas, and coal reserves. It's a money thing with them. Our second assumption is that the climate crisis is a loser proposition for both governments and the private sectors. That's why we see commercials about how much they're trying and nothing happens. Both our governments and the private sectors simply cannot and will not solve our global climate crisis. As a result, our environment and civilization are now at great risk. So, should we keep trying to brute force our institutions and private industry into taking action to solve the problem for us? No. We think there is a different approach and a better way. We offer you the consortium institutions. The consortium institutions represent a global custodial stewardship with an accompanying intergovernmental organization, which, directed by the people, ensures the people's will and best interests will be served. The consortium institution's prime directive is to develop as many in-house climate recovery innovations as possible. It will defend, protect, and develop these innovations, selecting only the best to build out into global infrastructure to begin reversing global warming and stabilize our climates. We're currently hosting advanced hydrogen technology, which could be developed to begin this transition. Our first application of this innovation will be focused on significant CO2 emissions coming from fossil-fired power plants to produce our electricity. If we could take these emissions and give them a second use by converting them into clean synthetic fuels for our cars and trucks, then we could begin to build out this hydrogen economy. Over time, we could begin to phase out fossil-based electricity production. At the same time, and over time, we could transition to electric vehicles with the electricity produced by this hydrogen. This means that we could immediately begin to reverse global warming on implementation. This would mark the beginning of our transition to a clean and renewable energy future. On approval, the world's people, with their governments, would engage in a 30-year plan to retrofit 50,000 fossil-fired power plants around the world to quickly reduce their emissions and civilization's carbon footprint. So, what do we call this new powerful tool? The consortium concept. Originally proposed in January of 2019, this developing advocate stewardship strategy protects humanity's red zones of life. It paves a way to allow us to take responsibility for implementing climate technology to reverse global warming and stabilize our climates. Our concept goes beyond capitalism and traditional market systems, which puts a price on climate recovery, adding considerable risks to humanity's outcome. We also go beyond commonly used government calculations, often sidelining the greater good priorities. Governments and markets will greatly benefit from our mission, realizing new forms of opportunities and prosperity, like stable fiscal budgets and strong markets, as well as limiting infrastructure losses due to the increasing, ongoing damage from the effects of climate change. The resources for our mission are pledged by the world's people through their nations. Our intergovernmental organization, the Alliance of Nations, separates out any social obligations and repledges to our not-for-profit climate recovery mission. Sounds like we have this all figured out, right? Not even close. We can't do this on our own. We've tried for many years, but we need your help to begin this transition with the authority and influence needed to clear a path forward to reverse global warming. So why hasn't your climate activism helped our ability to start fixing the problem? Well, that's a matter of perspective. The problem is the chain of accountability. There is no question that you are the leaders of social change. In fact, you're the ones who put it all out there and take great risks. But it's just a fact that your activism only leaves a temporary mark on our world's timeline. When you march, it leaves a public impression, but it's usually forgotten after only a day or two, a week at most. If not, then leaders attribute your action to some kind of radical group. The urgency and the message cannot be taken seriously in this way, at least by the people who could affect change. The consortium institutions use a different approach. A continuous chain of accountability. The consortium uses a collective base of moral authority and the influence of humanity. This base represents a certified single voice issued by the people. What I mean to say is, by the world's people. This notice is presented in the form of an official document, a memorandum, or a directive issued by the world's people and served onto the world's nations. This legal service of process must be accounted for and responded to. This emergency panic button are the people's directives based on core fundamental values and a diversity of inclusiveness in the form of fundamental moral imperatives, continuity of life priorities, and time-to-continuity transition timers, with humanity's last say and last rights to assume control over critical continuity issues. This is accomplished without changing a nation's internal conflicting agendas. This is no easy task, bringing together all human values, interests, and disciplines, and then representing it as one authoritative voice. These new tools represent the capability and capacity to clear any path for any critical continuity missions. This would solve a great many problems in geopolitics, markets, bureaucracy, and special interest influences. So, what do we call this new super institution? The Global Board of Advocates. So, let's make it happen, right? Well, there is no Global Board of Advocates. It's just an empty domain shell. Someone needs to build out this new institution. The good news is that we've initially developed a proposed site that will give you an online presence and community to begin taking on these challenges. Look for it at globalboardofadvocates.org. Have a look around and let us know what you think. I can work on implementing climate technology. But more importantly, you could be the key to ensuring our continuity of life and possibly pointing humanity towards a greater good. One more thing. If you do decide to accept this impossible mission, you would have the full backing of the world's people and the full faith and credit of the world's nations behind you. We would provide you with aggregated sovereignty privileges, rights, and protections. And we would step in and defend this institution's mission and its advocates. We believe that the Global Board of Advocates, using the consortium concept, is the best way to unify the world's people and their governments to align business and industry with possibly our last chance for a long-term climate recovery mission. So what do you think? Let's share your ideas. Oh, by the way, I'm looking for a volunteer chief of staff and a social media coordinator to help with our mission. Please refer anyone who you think may be interested. So we're going to take a short intermission and we'll be right back. All right, so please feel free to ask any questions you may have in the chat, but we do have a few questions from my last event, so let's go ahead and answer those first. The first one is, what is an advocate? So an advocate is anyone who has considered any aspect of humanity, social values, or the environment enough to stand up for and represent its values. How long have you been working on this effort? So since 2013, I've been in a problem-solving mode for about 4 years, investigating a social strategy to combat climate change. I began to develop the consortium concept and its institutions in 2017, and I have about 8 years of experience with this. How'd you get started? I grew up with my father, who tried to launch his climate reversing technology back in 2013. It ran into some interference because of what the consortium concept solves. How can we help? So we only encourage you to organize and vote as a global body with a single voice of humanity through the Global Board of Advocates. Do you want us to protest governments or special interests like big oil? No, we do not coordinate or encourage protests. The people define their governments, and you need to direct our governments to serve the will and best interests of the people. As an advocate, you must vote both your conscience and advocate for your community in the best way you know. Are you asking us to drop our mission efforts? No, we're simply requesting that from time to time you vote on societal issues when needed. I have friends who also want to vote and make a change. Can they also be advocates and vote? Absolutely. Anyone and everyone who takes an active interest in our world has an equal say in the global voice of people. This voice is presented directly to our governments and society. How is the consortium different from the Paris Climate Agreement? So there are many differences, but the most important are that governments have agendas that will not change, and they will further be complicated by markets and special interest influences. For more information, you can see our paper on comparison of the Paris Climate Agreement on our website, which would be the consortium website. Have you tried getting Greta involved? We've reached out to Ms. Thunberg, but she has not responded. We believe there may be common values, but at this point, we're not sure if she completely understands our approach, but we do look forward to meeting with her and sharing ideas. How old are you? I'm 17 years old. Are you going to school? I finished high school in 2017, so this is my full-time profession, but I do plan to continue my education and pursue a law degree. How do we vote? First, advocates must vote to organize the Global Board of Advocates community. So the first vote's going to be to organize. So this is your institution, so I can't really tell you what to do next. It's a conflict of interest for me. You need to structure this institution that fits the needs of the people, and I can help with that. How many climate technologies do you currently have? So we're currently hosting one of the 30 planned climate reversing innovations that we will incubate and support. How many nations are currently part of the alliance? None. We're seeking diplomatic relations with 194 countries, but it's not working. This is why we need your help. And while we're on the topic, if you have any kind of questions government related, you can refer to the allianceofnations.org and have any questions you need answered there. What can I do to help get governments on board? Organize the Global Board of Advocates and vote. We'll take your directives directly to the world's governments. How do we know if any of your technologies will work? We don't know, but we must try all possible options. I am pleased to announce that on September 2nd, 2021, I was presented with an official scientific assessment of the MPP Active Ion Displacement Science and Technology. Our chief scientific advisor, Dr. Dick Brown, has released his long-awaited scientific review of the MPP technology. It concluded important milestones in potential climate stabilization and global cooling capability. It also validates our ability to perform waste CO2 conversions into usable clean synthetic fuels, reducing the amount of fossil fuels we need to extract from the ground. This lowers CO2 concentrations in our atmosphere. His full review will be available on the Climate Protection Consortium's website under the ticker under CPC establishes Scientific Foundation for MPP Climate Tech page. That's a mouthful. What are your struggles? Authorization and influence of the world's people. We need the world's people to direct our governments to support our critical humanitarian effort outside of national borders to ensure the continuity of humanity. What is your role with the consortium? So as ambassador, I'm responsible for promoting the consortium concept worldwide, coordinating with the Global Board of Advocates, and incubating and developing climate innovations. Aren't you bordering on tyranny or sedition or trying to overthrow a government? No, this is not any of those things. The people established their governments, and you are the best representatives of the world's people. The people are fully authorized to redirect, direct, and remind governments of their fundamental purpose to manage our best interests for safety, security, and our best outcome. So you're trying to reinforce the principles of a government, of course. What are you doing about special interests in big oil? So let's take a look at big oil first. Big oil represents an industry currently exploiting a finite resource with assets all over the world. This infrastructure will be useful to us in our transition to a clean energy future. Oil executives and their shareholders will need to make a choice on whether to diversify into a clean energy future or to just go out of business. So which do you think they'll pick? We'll need their expertise to help retrofit this infrastructure. My bad. What I mean to say is, we'll need their expertise to help retrofit this infrastructure. Special interest groups are just a vague term for folks who just want things to go their own way. They'll need to adapt to an ever-changing world just like the rest of us. Are you saying we should trust someone who wants to take down the government? We should never be forced to take the choice of one, especially on complex issues like the climate. We need the voice of humanity, which is more balanced than the needs of the people, and needs and wills of the people. This is the purpose of the Global Board of Advocates. Do you really want to be here? I must look a little bit nervous. Well, that's because you're a tough crowd. Seriously, I'm doing the best I can, and I can admit this is the hardest thing I have ever done. And the learning curve is very challenging, and there are many aspects to learn. But if you'll bear with me and allow me to take my time, I think we can consider the big picture here. Do you work for your dad? Yeah, in the beginning I mostly did. I spent a lot of time learning from him, and about 3 years into this, I began finding my own footing. About 2 years ago, I started to work more independently, and today I'm mostly on my own. He works with the Alliance, governments in the private sector, so we do coordinate on issues sometimes. What's it like working with your dad? Right, well, when I'm working, he's not my dad. He's my colleague, partner, and co-worker. And that said, he demands excellence from everyone he works with. And because of this, I work hard to achieve. But after work, I spend time with my family. What does this panic button do? So the GBoA relies on many social tools like basic stewardship priorities, fundamental assumptions about civil and human rights, environmental understandings, social imperatives, and bodies of law which pertain to keeping the continuity of life consistently on track. The panic button refers to the world's people's last say and last rights to correct or reset the course of humanity back on the path to human and environmental continuity. What is the time to civilization transition, or TTCT? So this is the rate and scale measurement for how long it'll take for civilization to transition its global technology infrastructure without major faults to achieve optimal global sustainability and continuity, i.e. global warming reversal, climate stabilization, and clean energy implementation. The GBoA and analysts are currently working to publish these calculations to the world's governments and private sector. Are you trying to overthrow society? Of course not. But we do, however, limit the reach of distractions and detrimental interference, which may prevent or stand in the way of human and environmental continuity. These provisions reserve the right for the world's people to step in and prevent catastrophic events from occurring, which could cause irreparable damage to our civilization and possibly loss of life. I forgot to add biosphere into there. Well, it looks like those are all the questions we've had from last week. Does anybody have any other questions? Looking through, not seeing anything. Well, all right. Thank you for coming. I appreciate your time and questions. And if you had a question that I was not able to answer, please forward it to my email at MoniqueC, that's MONIQUEC, at consortium, must mean to say, at climateprotectionconsortium.org. That's consortium spelled CONSORTIUM.org. I'll research it and get back to you. I'll also be teaching a new course offered by the GBoA University on the introduction to the consortium concept starting February 7th of 2022. It's a free course with a volunteer donation, and registration starts on the 15th, which is today. Which was yesterday. Let's see. And registration started on the 15th. So for more information, you can go to globalboardofadvocates.org under community and select GBoA EDU. Well, please invite your friends and family to meet with me at our next event. And I'm currently scheduled every week through the 10th of January. And also let me know if you have any ideas for other events you think I should speak at. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. Have a happy holidays and have a great rest of your day. Bye.